CEICS framework. Very simple framework, very straightforward framework, nothing fancy. In fact, the acronym also uh, doesn't mean much. I mean, the acronym should be probably like silly framework or class framework, something like that. It should be a word, but it's not. Uh, CEICS stands for clarifying, external factors, internal factors, change in intent, and summarizing, right? So in an RCA interview, you will be judged for everything you say, you ask, or you infer. That is something that you have to drill in your mind. Every word you say, every word you ask, or every decision you take, someone is going to judge you for it. The interviewer, in this case, of course, is going to judge you for it, which is why you have to ensure that you follow a structured approach. You follow a good amount of coverage on every crucial consideration, and that is usually enough to crack this round, right? So being very cautious about what you ask, what you say, what you decide, or what you pick up as potential problems, that is one. The second is always being as structured and as narrow as possible. We'll talk about what narrow really means when we dive into the framework, but let's look at each component of the framework and try and understand. The first is to clarify, right? So what is to clarify? You have to start moving vertically and horizontally through the problem statement. Now, what does vertically and horizontally even mean, right? Let's say you are given a problem statement and the question that you ask is immediately what? Okay, what does this mean? Or how do you do it? Or why do you do it? All of these are horizontal directions you break down the problem into. Taking the last example of Uber rides that we did, let's say Uber rides are gone down by 10%, and how do you look at it? The horizontal directions that you're going to break down is is it down by 10%? What is Uber itself? What does it mean? Does it mean Uber the ride sharing? Does it mean package delivery? In within ride sharing, does it mean Excel, Go, Mini, all of those things? And once you've delivered these horizontal directions, you then need to go and break down each of those horizontal directions into vertical directions, right? So when you say, okay, Uber rides have bookings have gone down by 10%, what in the last 6 weeks, what do we do? Uh, and you have said where, and you figure out, okay, this is stemming from a particular region in Bangalore. Maybe airport rides have been impacted badly. Now you go vertical inside that direction. So to summarize, when I am clarifying a situation, I break down the situation into horizontal components. So in the Uber example, my components would have been, okay, where is this drop coming from? Uh, what what feature or what part of the product is contributing to this drop? Who are the kind of users who are moving early and who are not moving earlier with us and not moving anymore with us? And how are they going? What is the replacement? If the 10% drop is there, what is the replacement? And of course, if do we have any other answers of why? So those are horizontal directions I have broken this into. For each of these directions, we will pick one or two or maybe all three that show us meet. What does showing meet mean? When you ask me where, and I tell you or the interviewer tells me ki airport, this is a latch. This is what meet is in this situation. This is an insight that you can latch onto and go vertically downwards. You can go vertically downwards and say ki acha airport, okay, pick up or drop. Okay, what time? Weekday or weekend? Is there any particular flights or people coming from a certain direction uh, that are causing this problem? Because you don't know what could have happened, right? So the moment you break it down into horizontal directions, more often than not, if you break it down into enough horizontal directions, you will get that one horizontal direction in which the interviewer will give you a hint to go ahead in. That would be by giving you an insightful answer. That would be by not shrugging you off, because other directions may he will say, you can assume something, or go ahead and assume. If everything ends up in going ahead and assume, then you pick one horizontal direction on your own and then move vertically inside it. But usually in RCA interviews, once you've laid out strong horizontal directions, the interviewer will always end up giving you one direction that you can dig deeper and go vertical in, right? And how do you do that? You use the five W's and one H. Five W's are what? Simple. Who, what, why, where, and when. H is how. These are six questions that you must learn to apply. RCA to hai, but you learn to apply everywhere, right? The five W's and one H is one of the most powerful and one of the most underused methods of solving any problem, not even product problem, any problem. So clarifying. So again, clarification looks simple. Hey, this is just the first step.
वहाँ पे देखते हैं ना कि आपके पास ऑप्शंस अवेलेबल होंगे
There is some
like
disturbance.
yeah
Okay, it's gone now.
yeah
Yeah.
sorry
Sorry. So it looks like so easy, right? Clarifying. Okay, yeah. Just ask a couple of questions and situation is clarified. Or yeah, I know about this. Uber, though I know what Uber is, I know what 10% is, and so on and so forth. But the moment you ask these clarifying questions is when you will break it down into this is happening in the airport, this is happening for pickup, this is happening for people coming from Mumbai, so on and so forth. Unless you get there, unless you ask those questions, you are never going to get a compelling solution. What will happen otherwise is you would have started with a very basic assumption and you will solve a very generic external dekh liye, internal dekh liye change. You would do it like a tick box. Clarifying questions, like we discussed, right? In RCA, you have to be 9 on 10 to stand out. Clarifying questions is the backbone of getting to 9 on 10. If your clarifying questions are not good, there is little to no chance that you can really stand out based on your ideas on what follows. So I cannot emphasize this enough, even with people I work with otherwise, I mean, everywhere. Ask questions, understand the situation in as much depth as possible before you even look to solve it. And that is why clarifying questions is there, right? So that is the first step. I explained how, and then now I'm going to move to the second step, which is external factors. This is where it becomes easier. If you've done your clarifying questions well, the next steps get easier, right? If the clarifying questions are not good enough, external factors, you will do small issues or not be as pointed, little delta. Internal factors, little further towards the worst side. Change in intent, even further worse. And then you would just keep on, losing track of what you're trying to do. So all your energy in learning RCA, first of all, should be on clarifying questions. And that is not taught enough in the frameworks that you see. Clarifying questions is always, taught and treated like an afterthought. And you got to change that because that's what makes you stand out, right? External factors are major incidents and occurrences. So whenever you see a sudden drop, whenever you see a sudden drop and you see a sudden change in behavior, right? Or you see a long-term slowish drop, right? Either so what I'm trying to say is if the magnitude is high and it's sudden, it probably is there is a good chance that there is an external agency working at it. But if the magnitude is very small, but the duration of impact is very long, it could be an internal issue. It could be an external issue as well, right? External issues are what? External issues are policy changes, external competition, government changes, platform changes, and so on and so forth, right? Internal factors, once again, internal factors usually mean uh, changes in how the application works, how the application tracks. And one thing that you have to assume when giving RCA questions is that data reporting has to be correct. I mean, I see it very interestingly. A lot of people actually in internal checking just go ahead and say the first thing I'll do is check if the data is right or not. I mean, yeah, I get it in the real world scenario. That's probably what you're going to do. But in an interview, if someone is trying to check your ability to look at it, they're probably not looking for this. They're probably looking for a little more depth, which is why, while you must communicate that I'm assuming that all the numbers and everything that we are getting is right, and only then we are trying to solve this. And then looking at internal factors. To look at internal factors, there is a very simple hack. Map the user's journey end to end, from starting to begin to end, and for each screen, figure out every little bit of point of failure, every small point of failure that you could see where your problem can reside, right? So clarify, what happens in clarifying. Horizontal, you get that one or two, you know, glint in the eye kind of moments where the person in front of you says, "Huh, this is nice," and you go ahead and go deeper into it. And then once you've done that, you finally understand that, right? Then external factors. External factors are, drop offs in in government policy, or changes in the way users are looking at certain apps because of PR or social media or so on and so forth. Internal factors is mapping the user's journey, every step one by one, and based on that, every little point of failure can be investigated. Change of intent is what happens usually is, for some products there is a possibility for an inherent change of intent that can come. I'll give you an example for a very common situation. A very common situation here is games, right? Over a period of time, if your game does not continue to engage people well, there is a change of intent of people to stop playing, right? Now, this can happen through multiple reasons. One is you just have one game and everyone just can't play it for long. The second is the game gets difficult and you can't win, which is why the intent of playing the game is changing, right? So, always very commonly missed out, because people look at external and internal and close the summary out of it. But a very important point to look out is evaluate any possible external or internal reasons of change which can impact the behavior of the end user, right? And finally, the easiest is to summarize. Now, when I say easiest, I say it with a little smile, because again, another thing that people take as a checkbox activity. But imagine this: you are having an interview scheduled, you have your own work day, you are sitting with that person for like few weeks and everything, a few hours and everything, sorry, and you're tired, and probably 5 p.m., 5:30 p.m., 2 p.m., whatever, you're taking this interview, right? Of course, you want the right person for your team, but there is no surety that the person you're meeting is great unless your CV is like exciting them too much. Now, if that's happening, if that's how it is going to be, or if that's how it's going to work out, you need to understand that no matter how much depth you might have shown, there is a chance of the person missing out some key points, which is why the summary is the most critical aspect of your entire solution. It's like the story, the narrative that you can build at the end. So if you have the chance to do it, why spoil it, right? So if you think about it like that, you would never have a situation where you've taken that call and quickly brushed through the summary. Your summary needs to be a clear cut set of points that you can talk about one by one. And then once you've talked about all of them, you then talk about your recommendations. So that is the CEICS framework. Very straightforward, but the clincher or the difference is the fact of how much importance are you giving to the right approach. Clarification. Most people just ask basic questions, and from there they would go in. And then once that is done, they would just move into external and internal factors, but you need to stand out there. External factors, evaluating them well. Most people would evaluate external factors well. Most people would evaluate internal factors decently well. Change of intent, clarification, and summary is where you can cause a difference in the person's mind or in the interviewer's mind. Moving on, and we will solve a problem now, right? Uh, so order cancellation on Flipkart is up by 10%. You have to find the root cause. Right? Very easy problem. Uh, Thousands of thoughts go in the mind the moment you see this problem. Website would have been broken, payment would not be working, bad reviews on social media, hundreds of directions possible. How do you approach this so that it gives your interviewer the best version of your structured approach? Let's see. The first step is to clarify. We learned how you do it. You have to move horizontally first and then move vertically inside. Now look at the kind of questions I've written here, right? What? Let's talk about what. What orders are facing more cancellation? What qualifies as cancellation? Are there any what payment types are facing the most cancellation? Now, those are the questions that and the possibilities are endless. In fact, if you try to make it, you can make like 10, 15 questions on what itself, right? That is how what is important, right? How do users place orders? How do users cancel orders? How do we verify the cancellations are genuine? And so on and so forth, right? Going again, where do we see the most cancellations? Where do we see the least cancellations? What is the most common platform for cancellations? Who are the most affected by cancellations? Who are reporting the most queries? When are the cancellations happening? When are users paying for those orders? So already from a place where thousands of those thoughts were coming into their mind, we have bucketed all of them down into questions, which you, of course, I'm not saying that you should ask all these questions to the interviewer, but the moment you're working on these questions and you've got so many, pick three or four of the interesting ones, right? For example, for me, genuine cancellations and how do we even define that is a very interesting thought process, right? Genuine directions would be there, right? Uh, when are the cancellations happening is a very interesting direction to look at, right? Asking a few of these questions and getting those answers and saying that, when is the depth that I will go into and vertically dive down and try and figure out the situation. It helps us limiting the variables. Like I said, the moment this question comes to your mind, there are thousands and hundreds directions that you will see, that you will feel. But it's super critical, it's super important to limit your variables and to ask the best questions, right? Moving on, external factors. Now, very commonly looked at, we've already discussed about this as well. Disasters, policy, competition, sentiment. Four ways in which external factors can impact, right? Simple. Disasters, any recent disaster, any recent problem that has happened. Uh, Sentiment, is there a PR policy or is there a change there that has happened that's causing this? Competition, is there a new product that's coming into the market? Policy, is there a new government regulation that has changed into effect recently and that could have impacted my entire thing? External factors, like I said, very easy to look at. There are four directions in which you can look at it, and that is how you should understand, right? Internal factors. Let's say internal factors where I will break down the sample journey here. For the Flipkart problem, I've broken it down into 5 steps, right? You can break it down into 6, 7, 8, 3, 4 based on the product. Discovery, the ways in which the user lands on the product and the app. Now, understand that cancellations can all be linked to this, right? Have there been changes in discovery? Are we communicating something different to our audience right now? Are we communicating same day delivery and then later not delivering it? And that is, even though there are like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps in the middle, still just by a minute change on the discovery step is changing on the cancellation, right? So discovery is the first step. Now you can club them further again, saying that what is my paid marketing discovery, organic discovery, promotional, so on and so forth. Second is finding. How do people find the product? Now this is the product itself.
talking about what they need to buy, search bar, recommendation engine, category sections, sale running, and so on and so forth. Is there something that's changed there in terms of, okay, people are finding the wrong things now, and that is why they are canceling, right? Decision. Uh, when they make that decision, when the landing page of the product, reviews, delivery date, info, photos, videos, so on and so forth. When is the user convinced that they want to buy the product? Has there been a change there? Action, when they eventually pay for it, what is the payment modes they select, and how are they doing it now? And the final reinforcement is the confirmation, where you say that, okay, once you've purchased it, how are they being told of the delivery date, how are they being told about the predictability of delivery, expectations, quality, so on and so forth, right? So when you are looking at internal factors, your job is to break down the journey of the product completely, each step. Now here, for a traditional e-commerce, you could come and say ki yaar, no, finding is a big step itself. Finding means search needs to be one another branch, recommendation needs to be another branch, categories need to be another branch, because someone just exploring versus someone with a dedicated intent of finding, we need to separate them out. Perfectly fair, right? In of course, when you're doing it in an interview, you need to be as narrow and brisk as possible. But if you're not, makes sense, break it down into much more details. But mapping out the user journey is a major gap that a lot of people do when they are approaching internal factors. Most people, for internal factors, sit and say, okay, internal factors ka matlab ho gaya the first question, and every time I hear it, it just forms an opinion in my mind, which is when the person interviewing comes and says, okay, my first question is, has there been a recent release? Right now, that is just so broad, because you've got hundreds of features or directions or things that are done in the product by such a big product like Flipkart. There could be so many things that could have gone wrong. Website team could have made a release, backend team could have made a release, app could have made a release, so on and so forth, right? Major mistake in internal factors people think is internal factors means tech did something wrong. That's another important way of identifying if the person is not thinking deep enough. If they immediately come and say, is the backend systems working? It's a valid question, but that's not giving structure. You're not standing out if you're asking this question straight off the bat. You have to break down the user's journey, say, yeah, this is my journey. Let's look at discovery. What are the modes of discovery? Ads, social media, web page, landing page, referrals. Is there been any change in trend here? Right? What we could end up realizing is that, hey, referrals are the problem, right? People referring are just referring to gain a reward, which is why other people are ordering to win that reward and then canceling because the reward is on the first order. And this is an actual thing that had happened for one of the e-commerce giants few years back, right? So the fact that you have mapped the user journey well is critical to understand where the impact could have been, right? And then is change in behavior. Now I'll give you an example for this as well, and this is a very good RCA question that I have, and I heard from one of the gaming companies that was asking it. So what happens is, new users coming in, they are they used to play 3 games on an average first, and now they play one and a half, two, and the fall has been very gradual, right? Now internally there is nothing much has changed, externally nothing much has changed, because these are pretty straightforward games. But there is a very interesting behavioral aspect here. If you look at it, if the matching algorithm of the product, right, which is why, going back to again the product, if the matching algorithm of a gaming product is not great, then new people will continue getting matched with older people, and that means that new people will keep finding it more and more difficult than older people to approach a certain problem, right? Because the older people in the system would have played the game, they would have known it, and so on and so forth. This will lead to a gradual fatigue in them trying out the product for the more number of games. Now, this is a big example of how change in intent or behavior happens among users. If your product is repetitive, if your product asks people to do the same thing again and again, if it's a check-in product, right? If the product is, a social media product, fatigue comes in, which is why, Snapchat, Instagram keep experimenting with the way they look and feel so often. Keep experimenting with colors. Give you the opportunity to change themes and look at colors. Why? Using the same product causes fatigue in mind. It can be active fatigue, which is by, using it every day, the fatigue is there, or it can be passive, which is the algorithm is showing me so much, uh, I mean, let's not say depressing, but the algorithm in Instagram is showing me so much unrelated content that I don't want to use it. Or when I am coming on the landing page of Flipkart in our problem, the ads that I see, they are the same again and again, which is why new users coming or users coming back just take it in impulse because it looks great and all of those things. But when they buy it, the product is not really what they wanted, right? And gradually, this behavior is percolating throughout and happening for everyone, right? That is what change in behavior means. And finally, summary. As a rule of thumb, because I saw a couple of points asking what is a good summary and what is a bad summary, as a rule of thumb, I try to summarize the entire thing in 5 bullet points. Right? I love giving numbers to this because I feel uh, I feel it reduces the amount of cognitive overload the interviewer has, because if I tell him a lot of points, a lot of things, a lot of directions again and again, I feel it pollutes my entire work, which is why I say I'm looking at 5 bullet points that I look at, and I try to summarize my entire thing in that. And what I would do, I would take the first bullet point. Okay, when we were clarifying, we came to this. Then we looked at a few external factors, nothing really came out. Then internal factors, nothing really came out. And then finally, intent, nothing really came out. And then or came out and summarize my solution. Right. So a good summary is short, crisp, and a good summary does the job. Your job is to communicate what you wanted to the other person. Personally, I tend to use 5 bullet points, and I tend to focus on the good parts of what happened, right? It's harder to solve the problems like this because you can find dead ends again and again and again and again and again. Every time you come, you will find a dead end. Every time you find uh, okay, this might have been an internal reason, no change, dead end, go on, right? It's hard to keep knocking at it, which is why you have to eliminate all these not finding kind of situations from your summary and have that 5 point review on the summary, right? Pay attention to the tiniest of details while you're solving RCA questions, and then summarize those to the interviewer. Trust yourself that if you have done all of these 5 points rather well, if you have demonstrated structure to the interviewer, you have a great chance of converting the interview. Why? Because whatever said and done, RCA, just by following the framework, you get to 7 on 10. Building on top of the framework can take you to 8 and 9, and that is where you are trying to look at it, right? So that is why the CEICS: clarify, external factors, internal factors, uh, change in intent/behavior, and finally summarize, right?